All right, here we, sorry, here we go. Two more problems here that at first glance probably are going to be kind of scary that we're seeing absolute value with the trig function as well as logarithms with the trig function. Um, but I want you to pause, think through what you know about absolute value functions, about what you know about logarithmic functions and equations for both those, and nothing here has changed. It looks a lot scarier because you've got multiple ideas that you've learned happening at the same time. But I really think that if you go through kind of step by step and okay, what does this mean? All right, in that case, what does this mean? That you'll be able to get through there successfully. So remember that your domains just one time around the circle, and in radians. But think through these, pause, and really try to see if you can figure it out before watching through the video. All right, so hope you have in fact paused, and let's look through these now. So absolute value. Remember, when we have an absolute value, we're going to split up into two different equations. One when the value inside is negative, and one where the value inside is positive. And so we have that the secant of x is equal to negative root 2 as our first equation. And we also have that the secant of x is equal to positive root 2. All right, well then we're going to be, remember secant is 1 over cosine. And so then we have really that cosine is equal to negative root 2 over 2. And same process here, that cosine is equal to positive root 2 over 2. Oop, and we need some thetas in there, x's rather. So cosine of x and cosine of x. So knowing that, we're going to do the inverse trig function of the inverse of cosine. And so inverse of cosine of negative 2 root 2, negative root 2 over 2, sorry. Actually, let me rewrite that, getting a little bit sloppy there. That the cosine inverse of negative root 2 over 2 is equal to x. And that one we can figure out without a calculator. And the inverse cosine of positive root 2 over 2 is also equal to x. Now, where do we have cosine equal to negative root 2 over 2? And so cosine, remember, is your x value. So that's going to be here at pi over 4 as the reference angle. So what would that angle have to be? It's also going to be here at pi over 4. So what would that angle be? Sorry, those should have probably been in blue. Let me get those in blue. So that's the negative part right there. However, it's also going to be positive. So here we have pi over 4 and pi over 4. And so every one of those reference angles gives us one of our values of where cosine is going to be equal to either root 2 over 2 or negative root 2 over 2. And so what are those actual angles? Well, the first one, let's get a darker green. First one's going to be in quadrant 1. X is equal to, in quadrant 1, it is pi over 4, or 1/4 of pi. In quadrant 2, it's going to be pi minus pi over 4, so 3/4 pi. Three-fourths pi, or 3 times pi over 4. In quadrant 3, it's pi plus pi over 4. So quadrant 3, we have 5/4 pi, or 5 times pi over 4. And then in quadrant 4, all the way around, it's 2 pi minus pi over 4. So quadrant 4, we have, let's see, what is that? 7/4 pi, or 7 pi over 4. All right, so the absolute value gave us actually 4 different answers here. So kind of interesting. Hopefully you were able to get there successfully. Now on the other side, now we have logarithms, and I know logarithms can be a bit scary at first, but just think through, okay, what does this mean and how can we get through it? So if we're given the log of base 2 equals cosine of x, or sorry, log base 2 of cosine of x equals -1, well, hey, that really means that 2 to the -1 power is equal to cosine of x. And hey, 2 to the -1, that's not too bad. That's just 1 over 2. So 1 over 2 equals cosine of x. And that's one we hopefully are fairly familiar with. Where are we going to have that happening at? Well, cosine of x is going to be equal to 1/2 when our reference angle here is pi over 6. Pi over 6, or 30 degrees. Cosine's also positive in the 4th quadrant. So we've got these two angles to consider. So x will be equal to, well, in quadrant 1, x is going to be equal to pi over 6. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm figuring from sine, aren't I? My apologies. I hope you watched through the video there. It's been kind of long, so I don't want to start it over right now. Let's do this. Remember, we're doing cosine. Again, I apologize about that. So here's going to be pi over 3, and same thing down here in the 4th quadrant. So pi over 3 as our first answer. In quadrant 1, that angle is pi over 3, or 1/3 pi. In quadrant 4, it's 2 pi minus that 1/3. And so quadrant 4, we've got 5/3 pi, or 5 times pi divided by 3. All right, hope that helps.